We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody just do your job. You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Alex Kirshner. Thank you to Maction. This is, as we're recording it, this is our final vibe check. We do not know our publication schedule, but this is our final of the off-season vibe checks, which is where we take what you've done from roughly Thanksgiving weekend until roughly the beginning of spring practice and just break it down, talk some ball in a ball-less world. Everybody's talking about basketball, March Madness this, NCAA tournament that.
Baseball season this.
Baseball, enough.
English Premier League race for the finish that. No,
well, that's no race.
We're talking about Maction. We are talking about the Mid-American Conference. And yes, it is the vibe check. This is not a 2024 recap. It is not a 2025 preview. It is a check-in on how things have been going since roughly the end of the regular season until the time that we're recording this in the middle of the spring here as we get ready for the next college football season. One note for the MAC is that they have some realignment coming. As we talked about in our Independence offseason vibe check, you're going to get UMass back in this league coming up in this next season. But yeah, there is a remaining spate of MAC teams to talk about here that have had, I think in general, kind of tough off seasons. The off season is just not a really fun time to be a MAC school these days. I think every off season the story is kind of similar, but there are degrees of off season difficulty that MAC schools have. And the schools that can manage portal ratings the best and keep their players the best have a chance to go and win the conference. And who knows, maybe even contend for the G5 spot in the college football playoff if they could put together an undefeated season or something like that. Let's start with the conference champions, Richard. This is the Ohio Bobcats, who after a bunch of futility in recent MAC championship games did get one in Detroit over Miami of Ohio last year. They then lose their head coach. This is a carousel check-in for them. Tim Albin goes to Charlotte, and they promote Brian Smith, the offensive coordinator, who has had a pretty good run there, including not just winning the conference championship with a solid offense, but developing Curtis Rourke into the guy who could step into Indiana and do that and go to the college football playoff at Indiana. I think Ohio might have a little bit of juice here as well with their remaining roster. They have a freshman All-American tight end named Mason Williams, who did not leave. He was a Football Writers Association freshman All-American. To have any kind of All-American on a MAC team who does not transfer at this point in time is objectively awesome for that school.
Pretty shocking, to be honest.
It's a building block. I mean, he didn't have huge numbers. He had 200, 300 yards receiving, but freshman tight ends, there's a reason why a lot of them do not put up big receiving numbers. It's hard to physically break in that early in your college career at that position while also learning the playbook and being able to make yourself an immediate contributor in that respect. Ohio has some guys. Their quarterback, Parker Navarro, came on nicely last year in the first year post-Rourke. He was second team All-MAC. He's still here. They do have their losses, and every MAC team is going to, and they're going to be good players. So, probably the best player on the team, Bradley Weaver, defensive end, goes to Rutgers. He was first team All-Conference. Their best wide receiver was a one-year stopover from FCS who ran out of eligibility. The job in the MAC, if you have a really good year, is to try to only get deconstructed so badly by the portal, by your best players running out of eligibility. And that might be the case for Ohio this year. I think you will have to look at Ohio as a conference title contender again. And that is by no means a granted thing when we're talking about the MAC. I mean, you can win the conference title and then look like absolute dog shit for the next year. I feel pretty nice about where Ohio's at for new head coach, MAC portal situation, etc. Good time to be a Bobcat.
Always is. Ball State also has a new coach. Mike Removich comes in from Butler. He, like many of the players in the portal, I guess, are moving up from the FCS to the FBS.
Yeah, this is a classic, pretty clear that he wants to be a head coach situation. This is going to be his 25th year coaching. Hadn't done this at this level. I say wants to be a head coach, wants to be an FBS head coach, wants to step up to the big leagues and be at the top flight of the sport and have one of these jobs. He had been at Butler. That's the Pioneer League. That is non-scholarship FCS football. This is, even at the MAC level, it's just a completely different thing than what he's dealt with before. And I do not think this was a job that had candidates lining up for it. The big thing here, and you kind of start to see why as you look at what's happened to this roster, is that their good players just got plucked from them. They had the MAC Freshman of the Year at quarterback Caden Samanza. Then Tulane went and poached him. It's just the way of the world. Also notable that, so they fired Mike New before they hired this new guy, Uremovich. The quarterback goes to the school where New used to work. He used to be a Tulane guy. I don't know if there's much to that, but it made me go, that's interesting. New is at Illinois as a senior offensive assistant now. Tight end Tanner Kozial, another all-MAC guy for them, was probably the best tight end in the league, definitely the best tight end in the league, not named Harold Fannin Jr. at Bowling Green, who was sick. He is at Wisconsin now. They had the MAC Special Teams Player of the Year as a kick returner. He went into the portal. He's at Coastal Carolina now. Like, the names on this team, the fun players, the guys who got all conference accolades are just uniformly gone. And you have a coach who was previously the head coach of a league where they don't have football scholarships. So complete blank slate for Ball State. Like, we're just going to have to see what they look like. This might be one of the 5 teams in the country that we know the least about. And if you've been with us throughout the whole Vibe Check series, you know there are a lot of teams that we don't feel like we know a lot about at this point. This is one of the most.
Well, they've got a whole offseason to continue to cement the vibes. Onwards to Miami. Dequan Finn is back in the MAC, but not back at Toledo. He is at Miami after a dalliance at Baylor, where he did not cement himself as the starting quarterback, and Baylor went in a different direction. He himself went in a different direction and is back in the league. I imagine this is something of a coup, Alex, that Miami was able to pull this off.
Is it? I don't know.
To get him back?
To get this guy back in the MAC.
Back in the MAC, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know that Dequan Finn was a huge star a couple of years ago when Toledo was winning the MAC. I don't think that he was the best player on that team, and I think that Toledo just had a better roster than the rest of the MAC. It really, 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 really did not work for him at Baylor. I guess there's an argument that this is similar to what they've had the last few years, where they had kind of a name brand quarterback, Brett Gabbert, who I don't actually think was that great, even though he was first team all conference this year. He was frequently hurt and didn't seem to really develop into like the top flight G5 quarterback that you might have thought he would be. Sure. You can convince me that having a guy who's won the MAC at quarterback is worthwhile for Miami. I think that's reasonable. Did you see that these guys, though, for the second offseason in a row, did just kind of get beat up in the portal? Bad.
That is the story of the MAC. That is the story of the G5. And so it doesn't, I just say that to say, like, it's hard to even say that a team getting portal rated can stand out, basically.
Yeah.
Because it's just, well, that is what it is.
So last year this happened to Miami, but they had enough guys who did not get rated that they were able to still be a conference contender and almost win the league again. This year, I don't quite know if they have that. They lost their first team All-MAC receiver, Javon Tracy, to Minnesota. Second team corner, Rayon Strader, to Auburn. Gabbert finally runs out of eligibility. Edge rusher, Brian Ugwu, good player. Same deal. Matt Salopek, linebacker, had been there for a long time. Really good player, one of the most prolific tacklers in the MAC for years on end. Same deal. They didn't lose their kicker this year. They had a Groza semifinalist kicker. Last year, they had a great kicker. 2 years ago, they had a great kicker, and they lost him to Alabama. Chuck Martin, the head coach, was furious about that. He's like, Alabama came in and stole our kicker. This year, they kept their really good kicker, and I guess that's a nice silver lining. Got a kicker. Got a MAC championship quarterback, Dequan Finn. There have been worse foundations in this conference to build upon, but tough offseason for Miami. I think I imagine that Chuck Martin is getting fairly sick of this, the way that their offseasons have gone. Buffalo. This is a portal case. They lost the best player on the team. That's Sean Dolak, linebacker, one of those classic tackle accruing middle linebackers who just had a really good college career for them. Actually been some buzz about him in the NFL. You should watch out for him. This is going to be the second year in a row that Buffalo, the University at Buffalo, is going to put a linebacker in the NFL. Before that, it had been since Khalil Mack since they had done that. But anyway, do you know who the quarterback is at the University at Buffalo this year? Or most likely, the guy who they brought in who I think is probably inside tracking.
Please regale me.
Dequan Roberson for his 7th year of college football.
That's just stunning.
It's a lot of years of college football.
That is just stunning, man.
He spent last year as Avery Johnson's backup at Kansas State. Now he's here. This guy started his college career in 2019. This is, again, his 7th year. I'm not entirely sure who's being served here. They had a solid quarterback last year, CJ Ogbonna, who's trying to make it in the pros. I don't know if he'll be able to do that as a quarterback, but trying.
He has thrown, back of napkin math here, call it 375 passes in his career.
376.
Which began in 2019.
Yes. Remember, 2019 was a long time ago.
2019
was a long time ago. I mean, Donald Trump was president, and he is now again. And in fact, he was president for a whole nother season after 2019.
Yes, 2019.
Like, COVID had not yet. It was not even a thing at the time.
When he showed up, at Penn State, there was absolutely no nothing.
Do you remember in October of 2021 when Penn State went to Iowa?
Oh, I remember
3 versus 4 game,
my friend.
A 3 versus 4 game.
Yes.
Sean Clifford got hurt in that game, and Roberson had to come in and just was not ready. It was very bad. That was in 2021. That was his 3rd year in college football.
Yes.
He will have been in college football in 19, 20, 21, and then 2, 3, and 4, and then 5. Anyway, the eligibility situation has just gotten ridiculous, but we do wish him the best. And Buffalo had a really surprising, really strong debut season under Pete Lembo, 9 wins, and they beat the hell out of Liberty in that bowl game. So sure, let's see it. I don't know of a lot of cases where a guy in his 7th college football season has like really figured it out, but sure, let's see. Also, this will be the 7th season in which he has gotten on the field.
Yeah,
now, he had some redshirt eligibility because now you can play a few games and still have that, but he will have played in 7 college football seasons. I don't know how many quarterbacks have ever actually thrown a pass or gotten on the field. He didn't throw a pass in 2020, but gotten on the field.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure he played in 2020. Funny enough.
He has. He appeared in 1 game, according to our friends at Sports Reference. So he could become. I would welcome anyone if you can find me another example. The first guy at quarterback to actually appear on the field in 7 different college football seasons. This is obviously a fascination for me. We can move on.
Moving on to Bowling Green, which made the biggest splash, one of the biggest splashes of any team in the coaching market. They just made it pretty doggone late. In the end of February, Scott Loeffler moved on to become the quarterbacks coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, he left the head coaching job at Bowling Green to be an assistant in the NFL. When that happened, Bowling Green, frankly, decided that they were going to go out and make a pretty bold bet on Urban Meyer's, frankly, cajoling. Bowling Green's athletic director reached out to Eddie George, the coach of Tennessee State, who took Tennessee State to the FCS playoffs this year, in his, I believe, 4th year of the job with the Tigers, and obviously is an Ohio, not lifer because he's not actually from there, but considering he played at Ohio State and has been around Ohio for quite some time, you can kind of consider him an Ohio lifer. Eddie's something of a Renaissance man, obviously Heisman Trophy winner, former All-Pro running back at one point in time, engine to Tennessee Titans success, but also financial manager, financial firm, is apparently doing pretty well. Also on Broadway, a Broadway actor.
He's done a lot of stuff. He's had an interesting life. Let's see, Richard, we recently talked about this hire in some detail on our college football lunch break live Q&A for our subscribers at splitzoneduo.com. Do you want to just repeat ourselves a little bit, or you want to roll tape for a second?
Run it.
I want you to weigh in on Eddie George to Bowling Green. What do you think?
Yeah, the Eddie George thing is really interesting for a lot of different reasons. It gets Eddie George out of an HBCU. I think that Eddie did tremendous work at Tennessee State, but I understand if you are a coach of a certain ambition and you feel like you've maxed out at an HBCU, you feel like getting to the playoffs, which is what they did this year, is about the best you can do. I think they went 9-3, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, 9 wins after winning. This was a slow build because they had won, I think, 9 or 10 games in the 3 years before he took over. And by his 4th year, they win 9. They win the conference. He's coach of the year in that Big South OVC hybrid for a sense of the shape of his tenure.
Yeah, they're not in the Tennessee State's not in the MEAC or the SWAC. So I think the Bowling Green thing is interesting though. So okay, it's March, so tough to take over a job in March. Can you bring in your own guys? Can you increase salaries at all to be competitive? Can you? And I'm talking about coaching salaries to build your staff. What does your infrastructure look like? The general questions. I'm not saying that. I don't think that Eddie George was a desperate play by Bowling Green. That's not what I mean when I say what I'm about to say. But your head coach left you on March 1st. Your options are relatively limited for the type of person who's going to take a job at Bowling Green on March 1st. The other thing is we've got some Urban Meyer here. It seems like we got a whole lot of Urban Meyer here. Urban Meyer via his Ohio State connections, one would assume. Yeah. He knows Eddie George quite well, and it seems
we're not Colorado stating this. This is fine.
Right. It seems like they pretty much have said openly that Urban Meyer was very instrumental in getting Eddie in front of Bowling Green's athletic director and sort of getting him in the mix. So, okay, that's good on Urban. It is something that affects hiring diversity in the FBS level. So good on Urban, good shout from Urban Meyer of all people.
Yeah. Hey, sometimes you're surprised in life, and sometimes you take input from Urban Meyer on your coaching search, and it's actually not a terrible idea. There's a first time for everything, even in this day and age.
It's also like, what do we talk about when we talk about these MAC schools, right? If it's a deck chairs situation, deck chairs on a tiny Titanic situation, like, be bold. I don't know, like, try something. You know what I mean?
I would agree. And I think from the win the press conference perspective, this is a winner for Bowling Green. Like Eddie George is very, very sellable in kind of the way that you're describing, right? Like I think every MAC fan knows the score right now. Like they know the difficulties that conference faces. And it is exciting to be able to have a guy who you can put up there at the podium and who can get people feeling like a certain Ohioan excited way about college football. The press coverage that they've gotten off of this has been really good. Does that provide some marginal MAC recruiting benefit for the first year? Yeah, I think it might. Eddie goes up there and he says the goals as of right now are to win the Battle of I-75. That's Toledo, I believe. Win the MAC and then go play for a national championship. Those 3 things. He's getting coverage calling it a bold and inspired move. Now, does that win football games? No, but how many times do we talk about how hard it is to get MAC fans in the seats, given the way MAC games are scheduled now? I would be pretty surprised if Bowling Green does not see some uptick in attendance, in vibes, though you can't measure that one exactly, in 2025. I think, and you didn't have to pay a buyout for Scott Loeffler to leave. So this does seem really good to me, even though, I don't know that anyone can outrun the limitations of these jobs in 2025. So happy for everybody. Hope it works out well.
The last thing I'll say, Alex, is what Eddie brings, I think, from a marketing sense and a potentially capital sense, I think is interesting. Eddie's tied in to some financial stuff. I don't mean that nefariously. I mean, he's got a financial services firm that he runs, or at least lends his name to. Eddie George also is wildly successful in pretty much everything he does. He was on Broadway. Obviously what he'd done on the football field at Tennessee State. I understand how you're like, hey, look, everything this guy touches turns to gold. Let's try it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There will be a replica Heisman Trophy. Or do they give you the real Heisman Trophy?
They give the school one and they give the player one.
All right, so there will be a Heisman Trophy sitting in the coach's office at Bowling Green Not a lot of MAC programs can say that. I think it's exciting. David Peak asked in the chat, so then what does Eddie feel he can attain at Ohio State, which is the likely endpoint for him? Any thoughts on that? You think he's got his eye on Columbus one day?
Well, I mean, look, Alex thinks that Ryan Day is going to go 2-10 next year and that he's going to get fired. So, obviously the Ohio State job will come open next year and maybe Eddie will take a run at it. Who knows? But I do know that Eddie was in the mix. Eddie had an interview with the Chicago Bears that I think was more of kind of a fact-finding thing for the Bears. As far as the Bears are concerned, he also was interested in Temple, the Temple job. When the Temple job came open, he is from Philly, or the Philly area at least. And I thought he was going to get in on Akron if it opened for, frankly, the same reasons he got in on the Bowling Green job.
Solid. I think we're both into the Eddie George hire. So we do, by the way, on Tuesdays. We have not yet established like a complete weekly or biweekly cadence, but pretty frequently now we're going to start on Tuesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern time for our splitzoneduo.com subscribers, taking your live questions. We've been doing that in the Substack app, and we'll just have a good old time. It's kind of a less polished medium because it's questions that we're getting real time. And as you can hear, we record that on our phone, so the sound quality is a bit different, but we're interested in doing more of that. We would love to have you at splitzoneduo.com if you want to take part in those live Q&As and also get a bunch of bonus episodes. Great way to support the podcast. It's the lifeblood of what we do. In podcast business, I want to say thank you to our sponsors. This show is proudly brought to you by our friends at Nokian Tires. Some fun facts about Nokian Tires. Every tire that the company makes in Southeast Tennessee at its factory in Dayton is sold in the United States and Canada. It is a sustainable operation there. The factory is the first tire facility in the whole world to earn LEED V4 silver certification. There are solar panels aplenty. The Dayton factory is, as we have been told to say, and we say it for a second time, located 79 miles from Neyland Stadium, and unlike certain entities associated with the University of Tennessee, is not going anywhere from the state of Tennessee. We greatly appreciate Nokian Tires for its support of this podcast. We also greatly appreciate Homefield. Homefield is our longest standing sponsor. It is the maker of the shirt that I am wearing right now, this fine crew neck that I am wearing as I record this podcast, and as I record pretty much every podcast here because it's really comfortable. Homefield has new stuff dropping all the time on its website at homefieldapparel.com. Some of the latest is a new drop in its Diamond Classics collection, which is premium baseball and softball apparel. It is that time of year. If you are not a fan of a major league team that is going to lose possibly 100 games, and so you're not in a baseball mood, maybe more in a baseball mood than me, I was actually very excited because Homefield has a Pirates baseball 1985 pullover and a Pirates baseball 1980s retro snapback hat. But this is not the Pittsburgh Pirates, which currently make me very sad. It is the East Carolina Pirates. And there are about 19 other new schools that just had things dropped in their Diamond Classics collection at homefieldapparel.com. You can use the promo code SZD20 for 20% off your first order.
Alex, the one slightly disappointing thing about Homefield's tremendous baseball collection is that baseball is all we have left, just about. It's about that time of year, huh?
It is pretty much the time for the boys of summer. I mean, the College World Series are going to be wrapping reasonably early on in the summer, late spring. And then, it's Major League Baseball season, which is tough for me right now because for obvious reasons. I suspect that it's been tough for a lot of you because I have no doubt that the biggest fan base of baseball that we have listening to this is Braves fans. And it's been tough for you too. I know it has. Braves fans.
The Braves.
Yeah, I know it's been tough for you too, but at least with the Braves, there is hope that things will regress to the mean in a positive direction. Whereas with the Pirates, the mean is in a negative direction.
I do look forward to being with you at a Pirates game, which we will be doing soon together.
Oh yeah, we're doing that. Yeah, we are doing that. I was just thinking to myself, God, I don't want to go see any more Pirates games this year. But yeah, we're doing that. We already bought the tickets. We already bought the tickets, so we're stuck. Anyway, okay. Thank you. Richard, as we move, Western Michigan.
Broncos, big shakeup on the coaching staff. At least 5 new coaches, including a new defensive coordinator for Lance Taylor, who is entering into his 3rd year. I actually didn't realize he was entering into his 3rd year in this job. They finished the season 6-7, lost the bowl game to South Alabama. So we're going to hand wave that away because it does not serve our priors to tell a story. Besides the fact that perhaps it just tells a story of kind of treading water, but that's, them's the breaks of being in the MAC, Alex.
Those are the breaks. And Western Michigan can at least kind of keep its eye on a certain North Star, which is that they are the one MAC team that when everything went right for one season was able to go and get the old New Year's 6 G5 bid under PJ Fleck. Didn't lose a game until that bowl game against Wisconsin, I believe it was. Feels like that was an awful long time ago, and it gets longer. It gets longer ago in the past every year. But it's interesting to me that Western Michigan is the team from this league that has reached that high. Because as you talk to me about the way that things are now for this program, it just kind of amazes me that PJ was able to have a year like that in that job. We'll see. Toledo, Richard, is the team that should win the MAC most years, in my opinion, but doesn't. They're going to be a contender every year because in general, they have the best rosters in this conference. They do have one or two pretty interesting guys in this year.
Chip Trainum from Ohio State / Kentucky is a name that you may recognize. He is in at running back. If he's able to give them the gear that you saw at times at Ohio State, okay. Now, he was not able to get it done at Kentucky. And I tend to think some of that is a Kentucky thing. I think we've talked about the erosion of Kentucky's offensive line history over the last few years. It just isn't really there anymore for Kentucky. So Trainum struggled there. It wasn't the only part of Kentucky's offense that struggled. Obviously, Junior Vanderos is back for Toledo as an offensive contributor. That is pretty massive. Good player for them. It's going to help. He didn't go in the portal. Big deal. Very big deal. But Toledo is not having a spring game, but Toledo's not having a spring game because they're redoing the turf in the stadium. Jason Candle, who is heading into his 10th season there, despite his efforts to not be there anymore, he doesn't mind having the spring games. But when asked before spring about what he thinks about teams coming to raid his players if he were to have a spring game, Jason Candle said, and I quote, "Come get them. They do it anyway," meaning big schools coming to raid smaller schools. So it doesn't matter if you have a game or not. That's how I feel about it. Jason, yeah, man, that's pretty much the quiet part out loud there.
I guess I respect his way of his honesty about the situation, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's putting cards on the table, man. He knows this. He knows the score. He knows the deal. And he, just like the rest of them, know that the second they move on, if Jason Candle were to be the head coach of XYZ team next year, that the first thing he's going to do is go grab players he's familiar with, players he's scouted against, which are going to be in the MAC.
I'm sure that they would be. They should win this conference. They have the best recruiting base in the MAC, and every year they're the best bet to win the league, even when they don't actually go ahead and do it. Northern Illinois, this offseason falls under what I would say is our sort of weird stuff bucket rather than anything else. They are coming off one of the oddest seasons that any team has had in a while in college football. They beat Notre Dame in South Bend, and Notre Dame then went to the national championship game. They did not actually find themselves at the top of the MAC after that. They had a pretty regular season. They won 8 games. And then they just decided after the season that they want to no longer be in the MAC. Pretty interesting. A lot of stuff, a lot of big news going on around NIU right now. They are going to go after this upcoming season, so they've got one more in the league. But they've had a ton of success in this conference. They have won it 5 times in the past 14 years. This was the job in the MAC that launched Jerry Kill and Dave Doran and Rod Carey to other jobs. They made an Orange Bowl in this conference. They had Jordan Lynch play football for them in this conference. Again, they beat Notre Dame in South Bend in a year when Notre Dame made the national championship game.
Yeah. And hang the banner, to be honest with you.
So the MAC has been pretty decent to NIU. And yet you have NIU not wanting to be a part of it anymore. I think to some degree, we are seeing non-football driven realignment here. I saw a good report by our friend Matt Brown about this at Extra Points that NIU sees an opportunity to save a lot of money on travel costs in their non-football sports, which makes sense. They think that they can go and put they have gone and put a lot of their non-football sports in the Horizon League, which is a pretty solid basketball league, mid-major type, better basketball than the MAC. And they can move their teams around without having to make a ton of costly trips. And from a football perspective, and this is where it kind of is football driven, they're going to get more television money being part of this new reconstituted Mountain West that's losing a bunch of teams to the Pac-12 than they get in the MAC. But I think it's an interesting set of trade-offs because you're going to get more TV money. In a way, I think you're doing something really good for your fans here because you get out of the weeknight MACtion slate. I mean, you'll probably play some weeknight games in the Mountain West, but not nearly as many. So you have college football being played at a more college football time, and you can, you don't have to be stuck with the weeknight stuff. But also,
see, this is
you're going to Logan, Utah now, instead of drivable Midwestern destinations.
Right. See, that's where I disagree on that being good for the goose and good for the gander here, because it's not like you're Northern Illinois and the teams you're going to play on Saturday have the regional identity that you could at least pull from in some times when either team is good. Like, you're playing Utah State. Sick. Awesome that it's on a Saturday. But, like, that's not moving any needle.
Probably not. But it's going to result in marginally more television money for them. And we know how it is with these MAC schools. And that's why the weeknight games happen in the first place. So I get it. Richard, here's a thing about the actual on-field product for them in this upcoming season. They are dead last, 136th in projected returning production by Bill Connolly. Dead last.
Not great.
Tough.
Not great.
Dead last from a team that was pretty good. I mean, they won 8 games and they beat Notre Dame. That would be one thing if they had been terrible and it's like, all right, flush the roster. I think we are due for an odd, probably challenging season for NIU. And then things will get odder still because they're going to the Mountain West, and that's going to be a change. Go ahead, Richard, with the Akron Zips.
Akron finds itself in a very weird portal situation on offense. Both running backs are gone, but one of them has not found a portal home. Their best wide receivers are gone. By gone, I mean in the portal, but one of them has not found a portal home. The other one's at Louisville. So you've got this thing where there's a limbo here that Akron is in, and yet Akron obviously moves on and continues its big practice. Joe Moorhead is again the head coach. But you're moving on, replacing your best players, even though your best players are seemingly attainable because they haven't actually found a new spot. Now, obviously, the April portal cycle will probably have something to do with that. You would imagine that those players may end up finding homes as injuries in spring practice happen or whatever. But it's just an odd little situation there for Akron.
Yeah, Akron does not have to be as bad as it has been for a long time. And
I don't know if I agree with that, but
Richard, I think that Akron was just kind of a regular middle-class MAC team for a little while. And things turned for them, 10-ish years ago, and just have continued, actually more than 10, actually about 15 at this point. Good Lord.
I'm talking about.
But, this was a team that more often won like 4 to 6 games for a while. And then it became your frequent 1-11 and 2-10s around the time that they hired Rob Ianello in 2010. Terry Bowden interrupted that for a bit. And then since that, for the last 6 years, they've just been absolutely terrible. I don't know that Akron is a Kent State situation where it has to be that bad. They're neighbors at Kent State, but I suppose we'll find out if Joe Moorhead cannot continue to build something this year. And if they snap back to 2-10sville where he was for his first few years after winning 4 last year, then maybe it's time to be a little bit more down on what can possibly happen at a job like this. Eastern Michigan. Actually, Richard, this is proof positive of what I'm talking about. Eastern Michigan used to be a job like this, but Chris Creighton continues to do, I would say, very, very solid work in this job and continues to be one of the more deserving coaches of probably getting a look for some Big Ten West type jobs, but who just never will. EMU only won 5 games last year, but the fact that now constitutes a down season for them speaks pretty well of what Chris Creighton has built there. they have more challenges this offseason. In the portal, best wide receiver, Oron Singleton to West Virginia. They lose their kicker, Jesus Gomez, to Arizona State. He was an all-conference guy. Edge rusher James Jonkum to Virginia Tech. Those are all second-team all-league guys, the only ones they had, and they are all gone in the portal. The one guy was the Jonkum who went to Virginia Tech was just a one-year stopover from Arizona State, so they probably didn't expect to keep him forever. But you see the difficulties here, and yet Chris Creighton is still at it. This is going to be 12 years here in this job. He's 57 years old. He's kind of on the Solich, Ohio path, I think, as far as I can tell, where you're going to look up and that guy's going to have been there and become one of the most long tenured coaches in all of FBS. And he talks about it like he loves it and does not mind the challenges of it. Like I saw him doing his typical spring ball press junket thing where he's talking about, our 15 opportunities to get better and getting these new guys into our culture. And we have a way of doing things here. He is now the all-time FBS wins leader at Eastern Michigan by a ton. And, I guess he probably won't get a statue with a record that will definitely come in under 500, but he might deserve one. And we'll see if Eastern Michigan could actually go ahead and contend for the top of the MAC one of these years. That's the one thing that they still haven't done under him. I don't think they've done better than.
Yeah, I was going to say they
5-3.
haven't won the league.
Yeah, they haven't done better than 5-3 in the MAC under this guy. But at some point, you continue to field non-horrendous teams in the MAC for this many years. You do wonder if EMU could have an up year. And when it happens, we'll notice that it's happening around week 4 or week 5. It's not going to be the kind of thing that you can predict adequately in the preseason because they're just never going to recruit at that high a level by the ratings. They're never going to portal that hard. And you're just going to have to see that Creighton is doing it when he is doing it.
He's eventually you got to run into one kind of guy. But
I think so. Keep swinging. Keep swinging. Yeah.
Central Michigan brings in Matt Drinkle, who was on the offensive staff at Army. He was one of the offensive staffers brought in, well, I guess not brought in, but tapped, I should say, by Jeff Monken to switch Army from the under center flex bone option, which they did, and then they went back to something of a hybrid of the two, shotgun and under center flex bone, when it didn't really work in 2023, and in 2024, obviously they had a great season, did Army, and went one loss until Army Navy, so 2 losses, and so I think with Drinkle, what Central Michigan's getting is a guy who's going to run the ball creatively. That's what Drinkle wants to do. He's a guy who, I've sat in his office and watched Alabama film with him. You know what I mean? Like, this is a guy who thinks about the game and thinks we don't just have to be like a 3 yards in a cloud of dust MAC team as it pertains to Central Michigan. It's a guy who thinks like we can do the same stuff that some of the big boys did. I mean, this is a guy who played in college ball and has always kind of thought about the sport in just a different way and thought about what could be. So, I'm interested in what Matt Drinkle can do at Central Michigan. It's something that I think you look at and you think, all right, maybe he can have some success here.
Yeah, this guy's resume is so meat and potatoes. But
it's funny, but he's not a meat and potatoes guy actually. But yes, I know.
It's just like the places like he has coached at since he got into college ball. I think this is one of the more instructive, just kind of resume readoffs. He's been a tight ends coach at Western Illinois. He has been I think this is JUCO in Iowa coach and coordinator, and in Kansas as well. St. Ambrose University in Iowa and Kansas Wesleyan. At lower levels, he was the head coach at Kansas Wesleyan for 6 years. Army for the last handful. I think I'm more interested in that resume for Central Michigan than just going and pick your different style of retread. Jim McElwain's retirement job after Florida, or Dan stopping over there for a minute.
It's the same thing with Bowling Green. Like, just do something unique, man.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to go 4-8, 5-7, and maybe go to the Bahamas Bowl, like, dude, just go down swinging, for Christ's sakes.
Also, St. Ambrose, NAIA, not junior college. I correct myself on this. So yeah, long road for Matt Drinkle. I'm interested to see what he does at Central Michigan. So we recently recorded, Richard, with Roger Sherman, a whole big special episode. It's like an hour long, maybe a bit more, about why Kent State football is historically and always basically so bad. We recorded that episode in like early March, thinking that the story probably wouldn't change too much
And boy, were we wrong.
between now and the season. We were honestly just going to roll a clip from that episode here in this spot and just say subscribe to splitzoneduo.com, which we hope you do. It's a great way to get bonus episodes, support the show, all the works, and it's a great time to do it as we are entering the run up to the season. But the story did change, Richard. Kent State's coach, Kenny Burns, often 0-12, is fired, but not for going 0-12, for something else.
Yeah, they put him on administrative leave. They didn't really say why they were putting him on administrative leave. And then they terminated him as sort of the process. They terminated him with cause. They sent him a termination letter that included a few, I don't want to use the word charges because that's not really what I mean, but a couple things that the school says that he did that were untoward. And then recent reporting from The Athletic has unearthed that there's a situation where like Kenny Burns took a loan from a donor, and it's a very weird, convoluted situation. At the end of the day, Kent State gets out from under a coach who was doing a really bad job at a job that, as we have detailed on splitzoneduo.com, is bad.
Yeah. Donors helping a head coach with his personal finances is by no means unheard of in college football. By no means. But it does seem like a weird crossing of streams. And when you're also 0-12, I can see why Kent State just wasn't into this. And so, yeah, Kent State is coaching it for the time being. And I really think the goal this year should be to win like a game. I think that's pretty reasonable. This is, it was already pretty much as bad a situation as there can be in FBS. And now I would argue that it is a worse situation. So brutal. I know we have some Kent State fans who listen to the show. Hope you're able to have a good Saturday or two this year where things go right, because college football can be funny like that. Richard, that is the off-season vibe check for the Mid-American Conference. We'll check back in with these teams come August, come season preview time.